Para moderar este painel, eu tenho o prazer de chamar ao palco a CEO da Conspiração Filmes, Renata Brandão.
Boa tarde. Boa tarde, gente. Que bom ter vocês aqui. Obrigada por terem vindo. Queria começar agradecendo ao Rio2C pelo convite, por participar desse painel com 3 grandes executivos da nossa indústria. Quero aproveitar também para agradecer a toda a organização desse evento, né, que tem se mostrado aí nos últimos dias impecável, né? Tanta gente da técnica, da produção, gente que a gente às vezes não vê de frente. Então, um especial agradecimento a essa equipe que faz acontecer. E aos patrocinadores, né, que um evento como esse não acontece sem eles. Então, temos aí muitos espalhados, né, pela Venue. E eu acho que esse evento não poderia estar acontecendo sem a gente e sem eles. Então, um especial agradecimento aos patrocinadores que voltaram a acreditar na nossa cultura, voltaram a acreditar no empreendedorismo da arte, né, na tecnologia, em tudo que a gente está fazendo aqui. Então, patrocinadores, muito obrigado. Estamos vendo vocês, né? Bom, vamos começar uma conversa aqui sobre a América Latina, né? E para compor essa roda, eu gostaria de convidar meus 3 parceiros, grandes nomes da indústria. Vou começar pela Cynthia Stander, que é atualmente vice-presidente executiva de produções internacionais na Paramount Pictures. Cynthia é líder global, curadora de conteúdo e produtora com uma expertise única, tanto em filmes como em televisão. Stander é responsável pela estratégia de conteúdo, desenvolvimento e produção de filmes de língua local. Maravilhosa. Incluindo originals e remakes. Antes de assumir essa posição na Paramount, ela ocupou cargos de VP na Nickelodeon e foi VP executiva de aquisições mundiais da Paramount Pictures. Nice to have you here. Nosso segundo querido é o Christian Gabela, que é atual vice-presidente sênior, executivo criativo e head da América Latina e Espanha da Gaumont. Cris liderou a produção de projetos como El Presidente para a Amazon e, antes da Gaumont, atuou como vice-presidente e gerente-geral, general manager, né, da Story House na Univision. Welcome, Chris. Seja bem-vindo. E David Levine, atual diretor-geral de criação da Anonymous Content. Antes de assumir Anonymous, David foi chefe do departamento de drama da HBO nos Estados Unidos, responsável pelo desenvolvimento e produção de séries originais como Sharp Objects, Westworld, True Detective, Game of Thrones and The Blood. Big list. Big guy. Para fazer uma introdução, eles receberam esse texto em inglês, mas fiz questão de ler em português para a gente. O escritor José Saramago costumava notar que, nas previsões dos tempos das TVs portuguesas, os programas sempre mostravam também o clima e o mapa espanhol. Algo que, para eles, mostrava o quanto a Península Ibérica parecia unida. Mas a verdade é que talvez os nossos colonizadores estejam mais juntos do que nós, latinos. Os brasileiros, em geral, não se sentem latino-americanos, e sim brasileiros. Só 4% dos brasileiros se definem como latino-americanos. No resto do continente, uma média de 43% da população se diz latina. Apesar disso, o Brasil muitas vezes é líder da região em negociações econômicas, políticas e diplomáticas. E, apesar da maioria da população negar, somos parte fundamental desse continente e dividimos mais experiências do que imaginamos. desde as mesmas histórias de exploração das riquezas a mitos, realidades e sabedorias populares. E no audiovisual e nos negócios, quanto antes entendermos que somos parte fundamental da América Latina, mais poderosos seremos. Eduardo Galeano disse no As Veias Abertas da América Latina que a primeira condição para modificar a realidade consiste em conhecê-la. Então, com isso, vamos abrir o nosso painel para falarmos sobre como esses três estão vendo a realidade, os negócios e as perspectivas aqui na América Latina. There are many ways to divide the road between continents, blocks, regions, global south, global north, Latin America, and I heard Rola, rest of Latin America. How do you see the road? How do you at Paramount, Gaumont, and Anonymous divide the road? And in the streaming, there is Latin America and there is Brazil. And this is a question to start our conversation. I would like to hear all you three.
I guess I'll start. First of all, thank you for having me. This is my first time in Brazil, definitely not my last. And thinking about how we define the world, I mean, I think when you think about content, there is an expectation that you're delivering relatable, authentic stories. So in that, if you focus too much on the division, you're not really kind of getting at the heart of really the content and how it's intended to connect. I always say that you want to start local and then take it broader. So I don't know if the division is going to bring you so much, but as a company, of course, you know, we do define Brazil as a part of Latin America, but by no means do we lump Brazil into a generic, you know, definition of Latin America. There's so many things that make Brazil unique within Latin America, and we want to celebrate that uniqueness with the way we approach the content, with the relationships with creators, and not lean too much on the differences.
Part of that because of the language, right? But we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that one.
Yeah. Go, Chris.
Hola a todos. Thank you, Renata, for moderating, and thank you, Rio Tusi, for having me. I oversee Latin America for Gaumont, and we've had a long-standing relationship with the creative community across the region. Of course, we were probably the first big global production to produce initially in Colombia, with certainly some Brazilian spirit. We had Jose Padilla and, of course, Wagner Moura play in Narcos, which we've done 6 seasons of, produced in Colombia, then in Mexico. And so for us, the way we look at the region and we look at Brazil is certainly we manage it with a team that has expertise in the territories, that has worked there for quite some time, that has built relationships with producers, with writers, with directors. And for us, it's really a great playground of incredible talent that we can collaborate with. And for us, it's continues to be a very big focus for our company.
Thank you, everyone, for having me again. It's so nice to be back in Rio. It's extraordinary to be on this panel with these two wonderful colleagues. I was going to say, the question is kind of a little bit strange because none of us seek to divide the world, but to unite it. So all of us kind of do the same thing, which is that we try to learn everything we can about everyone that's really brilliant in every market, and we really try to work together across the world. So our entire company mantra is to David DeVoli, my wonderful colleague who's here, like we just literally build connections with artists, production companies like our brilliant colleagues here, Rodrigo and Barbara. And all we try to do is make the best things we can that everyone can watch together.
Yeah, and talking about this, and I'm always trying to understand, the position of Brazil in Latin America and how Latin Americans see Brazil and the opposite. And what stands out in positive and negative terms when dealing with Latin America market? And with Brazil more specifically, what position does this market occupies in the business strategy for Anonymous, Gaumont, and Paramount in terms of volume, focus, and yeah, how big is the strategy for Brazil and how big is the strategy for Latin America for the next years?
It's in the DNA of our company. We really started as a commercial and music video production company, and two of the directors from the very beginning were two of the amigos. So Alfonso and Alejandro and Guillermo were always part of the DNA of the company. So we've always, this has always been imperative to us. But our partners here are extraordinary, and I think it's crucial for us to be able to support them and to support the community and understand the community and figure out everything that we can bring to it from the States, and let them shine here because they do incredible work and have incredible projects. I think it's tantamount to our strategy to be understanding, supportive, respectful, and constantly communicative, and give everyone what they need to be able to shine here. That's our entire strategy. It's not a bringing back to the U.S. strategy. It's entirely what can we do here with you.
Chris, what's your thought about this?
Yeah, I think for us, we've always seen them, first and foremost, they're huge markets. So if you look at Mexico and Brazil primarily as being the two largest markets in Latin America, each of them on their own has incredible potential. Obviously, the rest of the region speaks the same language. There is some pan-regional sort of opportunities that we see as well. But again, since the advent of the streamers, and we certainly feel like we played a bit of a role with Narcos being sort of one of the first bilingual global hits that we've had in the streaming era. We just feel like it's a great opportunity for us to work with great talent, and we also feel that it's a great opportunity to give that talent an opportunity to make global shows. And I think that there's been an awakening with so many examples now. Obviously, the latest, Squid Game or Lupin in our case as well, which was a global hit, of local content that has really traveled all over the world. And so for us, we know and we have valued the talent very highly for a long time. And we're happy to see that because of the way content is distributed now, a lot of that content can have a global appeal and not just stay within the territories.
So Portuguese is not more a barrier to be in a global position, right? But when you have to think about your strategy, like if you produce with Mexico, for example, you have the whole Latin American that speaks Spanish, and also the U.S. Hispanic community that is 25% of the U.S. American community, and you have also Spain. Do you put that in the table to take the decision if it would be better to make a show in Mexico that you guarantee to have this first local Hispanic community that will watch it first and then make it global? Then when you compare with Brazil, that we're going to make in Portuguese, okay, we have like a huge population. We start with a huge audience. But don't you feel that this decision, it's part of your thoughts when you compare Latin American market, Mexico, Colombia, and when you compare Brazil?
Well, I would answer that and say, first and foremost, I don't think language in and of itself is not a unifier or a divider. When I think of, if we wanted to talk about the Spanish language, and there are significant cultural differences and nuances, to tell a story from an authentic perspective in, Colombia versus Mexico. So I think just leaning on the language as being a, distinction is now allowing you to, I think, allow for the creative freedom and the authenticity that should be there in the content. With my new role, I'm focused on international local language productions with a focus on theatrical for our company. And if, I were to think about this business as, Portuguese doesn't travel, I'd really be limiting my overall business strategy. I think at the end of the day, I want a successful film for me will be one that works locally but connects globally. And the connection globally, the responsibility is on us as a distributor, but I think it's also a really amazing opportunity for the creative to tell a story that's relatable. I mean, if we think of Hollywood as a center or a hub for creativity, it's English language content. Obviously, English language is not spoken everywhere in the world, but yet and still these stories connect and relate. So if we take that approach, by first starting with authentic, relatable stories, and when the focus is on local language, to make them really hyper-focused on the connectivity locally, you really expand the opportunity, I think, for them to work globally.
Yes, I would like to hear your thoughts too, David.
Yeah, I think language is only a barrier when it's used as one. Because language unto itself can be so accessible and so inviting to be able to experience another world you never get to travel to, and to be able to identify with the way that people are somewhere else. I actually find that, because Christian just said it, it's those hits are relatable because those hits transcend their language. When you make a show and you decide what you're going to do, the things that I got to work on in my old job, the reason why Game of Thrones or Westworld or True Detective became ubiquitous wasn't because the English language was a barrier, it's because the ideas, the themes, the emotions were so relatable that everyone could connect to it no matter who they are. And those worlds were really substantial and big and made up. But I made a show called Our Boys that was this beautiful show in Hebrew and Arabic, very, very tiny, that was as relatable as anything I'd ever worked on. It's just about how hard it is to live there and be a neighbor to people who won't get along with each other based on the circumstances. But I was going to say, we're making so many interesting shows here, and I'm so proud of our team and our colleagues. And the show that we go into a writer's room next week is still one of my most blissfully wonderful experiences. It's a show that is based on a collection of short stories, and it is so about Rio. It's so about this place and this city and the experiences of growing up here and living here and trying to make it. It will be so relatable in Lagos, in Bangkok, in Yogyakarta. It's everyone who grows up in a city who's just trying to move up in the world. In Mexico City, they'll relate to it, because relatability, accessibility is ubiquitous. Language is only a barrier, like I said, if we use it. People learn to speak Dothraki. They've learned to speak Klingon. Every language is learnable for the enjoyment of entertainment.
Yeah, we saw this big movement with Round 6, in the key pops and the key novels happened suddenly so strong that really changed the game deeply, right? So what are your main challenge when it comes to storytelling? What is the best way to bring aspects from local identities to global stories? This, I think, is a challenge that we creators in Brazil are facing so much, where we put our efforts, our creativity on that. And what are the best ways to develop these aspects and seek the global reach? I know there is no recipe, but maybe some advices, because Brazil is doing well for the last 10 years, is increasing a lot and getting really it increased a lot his position in the market. But we want to go further. We want to lead more, and as you guys are creative executives, how you would be your advice, for this creative audience and for producers, creatives, and business people that are really working hard, to tell local stories and to identify the best parts of Brazilian culture, but to be in a better position or grow Brazil outside Brazil?
Yeah, I would say that also as a Latin American, I'm very proud of how much the industry has matured in such a short time. I think you've had a scenario from Mexico to the Patagonia of really the merging of two different cohorts of creators, some that came from the more traditional television space, which has been alive and well for many years in the region, and filmmakers. And I think that together, that blend of talents has really helped the industry mature significantly, especially as the streamers have come in and budgets have become increased relative to what they were certainly 7, 8, 10 years ago. There's still a way to go, and I think that's still a challenge, but I think it's only an opportunity, really, more than a challenge. And we certainly feel like placing bets locally is important, not only because we want to support local productions and local creators, but because there's clearly a benefit to doing so for us. And so I'd say we want to be facilitators, and certainly we're learning as well. This is not it's not something that's happening from outside that's bringing necessarily knowledge. It's not that Gaumont, it feels like we're bringing any specific teachings. It's an organic growth that's happening in terms of expertise and knowledge. And we see as collaborators of that movement. So I would say that is the biggest opportunity that exists. And then from a story perspective, I think again there's so many stories to be told that, as you say, are universal regardless of where they come from. There's so many opportunities now, I think, which is very different to how Hollywood has worked for such a long time, where if you didn't have the credits that showed a long track record, there was no way for you to rise to a showrunner position, and all that has really been shifting quite a bit since content became globally accessible. And so now you have creators that are Brazilian or from other parts of Latin America that are getting those opportunities because there is real talent and experience in what they've been doing. It's just not been part of the Hollywood ecosystem. And so for us, I think we bet on the storytellers, on them creating and bringing stories that are relevant first to them, to who they want to speak to. And most of the time, those are universal stories that also work for everybody.
Yes, you have a very important case that from El Presidente, that you have an Argentinian showrunner, you shot in Chile, and you release in Uruguay. Tell us a little bit how you manage this.
We have a great show that we did for Amazon. The first season we did in Chile, and it was a mix of English and Spanish. The show is about corruption in the world of futebol. So, as you can imagine, there's quite a bit to tell. But the first season was about a Chilean character mainly that was involved in FIFA-gate. The second season was predominantly based on the story of João Havelange, who of course was a Brazilian president of FIFA. And yes, we had an incredible, the United Nations of creative powers. We had, of course, a showrunner, Armando Bo, who's an Oscar winner for a screenwriter for Birdman, and a collection of writers that were Argentine and Brazilian in the writer's room, a mix of directors that included Armando, an Uruguayan, 2 Brazilians, Daniel Rezengi, if he's here, and Daniela Thomas. And of course, we had also a collection of crews from different parts of the world. We had Uruguayans, because we ended up shooting in Uruguay because of COVID.
Pandemic.
Brazilians, Argentinians, Spanish, and we brought folks from the US. So yes, we have blended well, I think.
We should
with
make the offer about El Presidente to see behind the scenes between the Latin American work together.
We would have many seasons, yes.
David, Anonymous just arrived in Brazil a few years ago. It's a very acclaimed production company in North America, and also you, one of the big creative executives from Hollywood. I would like to hear your thoughts for Brazil. You know, since you arrived here until today and your plans for the next years, what you are looking for, what you are doing, what's coming, if you can share your next steps with us.
We can definitely share some of those next steps, so that Barbara will run on the stage and tell me not to share any of the next steps. But we are very lucky in Brazil. The strategy for Anonymous 5 years ago, before Steve Golan died, was to build with amazing local producers, production companies, territory by territory. We're in the UK and Norway, in France, and in Brazil. And the relationship here has been really extraordinary. We are so lucky to be partnered with the best company I think I've ever worked with. The material that they're working on, they have a doc series we're selling in Cannes this year with Global. We have a couple series coming. I just don't want to get too ahead of it in case things are out or not out, so I'm trying to be very careful. But we've really have incredible trust in our partners. I think what we've tried to do here is we've tried to give everything we know and everything we have in the US to be able to support the company here, who has incredible bona fides, incredible film relationships and TV relationships. And we've learned so much about the distributors here. I was going to say to the last question, to add on to this, television has changed so much in the last 15 years. When I got into television from movies, I think in the company I worked for, we tried to reimagine television and movies as the same thing. So there wasn't a difference between the television we were making and the movies you go see in the cinema. You'd see the same names of the same people at the very highest levels doing their best work. And it really seems to be the same thing coming to Anonymous. I'd made True Detective and The Nick with Steve. It's an incredible company. And I think working with Rodrigo and Barbara here, and Lorenzao and Berta and the whole team, the standard at which they hold themselves to is so high. It's really extraordinary to be their partner, just because we feel like such kindred spirits. All the things we're endeavoring to do is just to make the best things we can in the market. It's to understand the distributors. There are multiple distributors that have moved into the market since I was here last. They all have a brand and they all have a point of view about how they're going to work here. And I think it's our job to make sure always that we support an artist telling of a story within the confines of what can be distributed in each place. Both my colleagues on the stage know, because one of my colleagues here is a distributor, one colleague is a seller just like me. We're trying to figure out, well, how do we create a show that everyone here will want, but that someone will do the best with when they reach the audience? And I think that's entirely our goal at Anonymous. In the States, our entire strategy has been very director-driven. I don't think that's changed, but we are also extraordinarily talent-driven. The center of every show, and then in every role of every show, is an extraordinarily talented person, and you've got to back them and support them, and that's the entirety of our business strategy.
Perfect. Srincha, we have a talk yesterday, and you told me your strategy to work with remakes at Paramount, that you have more than 4,000 titles, films. You have so much successful box office case. We have in Brazil cases that were foreign remake that did so well, and we have also sold the right to several comedies to be produced abroad. Does it make sense to make these remakes with a local flavor in a world where entertainment is so globalized? I would like to hear your thoughts about that, because on your hand, you would think everybody's on big Pangea, you can see content in Spanish, in Turkey, in Japanese, and Portuguese. And in the other hand, you say there's a film or a story that I would like to remake or to make a continuity or in another language, in another country. So I would like to hear your thoughts about your plans.
Yes, it's really exciting for us to, really kind of reach into really, I think, what makes the studio, which is its legacy of film. At the end of the day, those stories succeeded at whatever stage they were released because they connected and they were relatable. They still succeed and perform and as catalog titles, if you will, library titles, to just say because of that relatability. If you stay close to that, there's such an opportunity, and the word I like to use instead of remake is reimaginings, right? That you could take the essence of a highly relatable story and reimagine it in the eyes, and the mind of a really brilliant local talent, to revisit that story in a way that's authentically rich, but local. And local does connect globally. We know that for certain. I use this kind of personal analogy. I have a 13-year-old niece who lives in Oakland, California, young black teenage girl who's absolutely obsessed with Korean rom-coms. It's all she watches all weekend. And when she's not watching Korean soap operas, she's watching Japanese anime, and has even taught herself a little Japanese just by watching it. That's one of the things that content does. It just allows you, it allows you to see an aspect of yourself through the lens of someone else. So I want the world ultimately in the broadest success possible, because like I said, first and foremost, I want my films to succeed here in Brazil. They're made here in Brazil. I want that success to register in Brazil. But I wouldn't lie, if I'm measuring the extent of my success, is that I have given a filmmaker in Brazil a global platform, where now they have a deeper and richer relationship with the studio, that their name is synonymous, with, the quality and the profile of their work, not that they are a Brazilian filmmaker. I think we've always approached movies. It's one of the things that makes movies movies, is that we see a little bit of ourselves in every character. So why couldn't we connect and see experience that same degree of relatability, but through the lens of a Brazilian filmmaker telling an authentically Brazilian story? So that's exciting.
Chris, you have the same amount of catalog, right? It's Gaumont. It's the oldest studio in the world, 120 years. Am I right?
120 something, yes.
Okay. And so, do you have the same strategy to go back to your live catalog and refresh it? I don't know the best word to say that in English.
Yes, we do. And look, remakes or adaptations have worked for a very long time in television and film. Not our film, another French company, but Coda won the Oscar a year ago as a French adaptation. I can think of many.
It's a Gaumont project, yeah.
Yeah, The Departed, Martin Scorsese, that's an adaptation. Obviously, The Office is an adaptation. So I think it's just the basis of those stories are obviously the stories that are universal and can occur in many different places. The magic comes when someone puts their own flavor, their own local, breathes a local life to it. And we feel certainly it's not just the fact that we have a broad catalog, but it's also the fact that we are a French company. The films that we make in being French are certainly not all the size of some of the American films, so they tend to be more adaptable for different regions of the world. They've also were produced in French, and French language doesn't travel the world as much as obviously English-speaking content. So there's really a fresh opportunity for the creator to make it their own, because it's not that the entire world has seen. We have a few movies that have done very well, of course, but there is an opportunity for it to really feel fresh. For example, not that many people know that Coda was a French remake. And so we are certainly very focused on that, and our approach, first and foremost, is we do our own filtering. I have a team that's 100% Latin American. We do a filter for the type of content that we feel would work best in this region. And then we have intimate connections with the filmmaking community in the territories. And so we know, okay, with this filmmaker, we can go to him or her with this type of movie. And that's been our approach, and it's been very successful thus far.
Yes, we have like 5 minutes, but I have a question for you that I know Anonymous is increasing a lot worldwide. There's Anonymous in Scandinavia, and so I'm not going to list because I'm late for you. What is the strategy with, so many JV around the road, and how powerful that can be when you see with a streaming now as such a strong artistic production company to manage the deals, license deals, not more work for hire? How do you want to increase your negotiation using your international strategy on your side?
I think you just joined our board. That's a question I would get at a board meeting. The wonderful opportunity, I was just thinking about the amazing privilege of having a vast library of stuff versus having to start from scratch. I think Anonymous's legacy, I think, is disruptive. It's a word that my old boss used a tremendous amount because we've had to make things super original in every market to identify ourselves and to have the Anonymous name become something as synonymous as Gaumont, which is an old studio, and Paramount, another legacy, wonderful old studio. And we're a newer brand. We've been around for 24 years. I think our goal historically has been to work with people who might work against a market instead of towards a market. Our strategy internationally evolved. Steve wanted to get into the business. He had so many collaborators around the world. He was a perfect partner. I think probably everyone in this room might have had a 50-50 deal with Steve Golan from when he came down here 6 years ago. He just was a great man and always wanted to be a partner to all. I think what changed after his death 4 years ago when I joined the company, the only thing we could do is instead of trying to bring everything back to the mothership, I think we've become even more conscious of the fact of how we have to build locally, how we have to empower really strong artistic people and really strong artistic communities, because ours isn't the only one. I think ours is one that has travelability, and we talked about it on the stage. We have made things that penetrate. We have the distribution ability to be able to show everyone our work, and we have to provide equal opportunity to show everyone's work to our audience as well. But I would say that the reason why we got into this really was conscious of distribution, because we're not a distributor. And I was at HBO for 10 years. We were a globally traveled network through partnership. We had partners in other places, and there wasn't an HBO everywhere. Netflix rose up over the last 14 years. When I came down here in 2018, Netflix was an actual act as opposed to watching TV. When you said, what are you watching? They say, well, I Netflix this. And I was like, oh, we don't exist anymore. The world has changed. Distribution is very different. The services, which are moving into every market, are everywhere. And I think we wanted to, instead of try to empower and build a company from the US that could serve the world, we wanted to build a company literally that would serve the world from where the world exists. So we had to work locally in order to do it. And our strategy shifted from what everyone else was doing, not our colleagues on the stage, but in our business, in our city, which is to bring everything back to the US to exploit it and remake it in English. We want to go the opposite way and try to do everything in Norwegian, French, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, and our interest is in trying to find a unifying linguistic connection through entertainment. That's been our company philosophy. Hopefully we're continuing it together with the amazing partners we have.
Perfect. To end, unfortunately, we're in the end. I just want to finish here your thought. Na verdade, in theory, I would like to hear, what is your dream for Brazil in the position where you are for the next 5 years? One dream that we will come back in 5 years and we see if you got it.
I would say, as a measurement of my success in this market, that I am elevating the voices that represent Brazil in all of its beauty, its diversity, its variety of culture and story, that I've shown Brazilians that their stories are worthy, that their filmmakers are worthy, and I've shown the world that the voices of all of Brazil and its population are connecting.
Brazilian Oscar Street.
I'm working on it.
I was going to say that.
Give me a minute.
Brazilian Oscar. This is what we need. Chris.
No, I think, look, I think this is a growing market. I've heard, this is the first time I come to Rio to see, but I've heard that it's grown quite substantially. So in 5 years, I think my dream is probably going to come true, which is that this will be a much bigger place for filmmakers and creators to find collaborations that allow them to make content that'll be seen throughout the world. So I hope to see more Brazilians outside of Brazil and more outsiders coming to Brazil and have that collaboration lead to great things.
I've always thought that the way you look at dreams, because it's such a beautiful question for all of us, I used to think that what you dream of is what you do next. And then I lost Steve Golan and Jean-Marc Vallée, and I thought, well, the thing you have to dream about is what you do now. I went to a party last night thrown by my colleagues, and I saw my dream come true. It was the community that was here, and all of these amazingly talented artists and executives and people. That is a dream. It's already coming true. The work you're doing today is the work of 5 years from now. We're just glad to be a part of it. We're so grateful you invited us down, and thank you guys so much for having us. It's genuinely wonderful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Trey. Thank you. Obrigada, gente, pela presença. Até a próxima.